and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. I hope you're all having a lovely week so far. Today's video is my March wrap-up. Now I split, because I've been reading so much, I've been splitting my wrap-ups into two. So this is the second part of my March wrap-up, what I've read in the second half of March. I will link the first half down below. I'm going to talk about 9 books here. And yeah, I guess I'll just get straight into it. So the first book I want to talk about, I was really disappointed in because I honestly thought this was going to be a 5-star read for me. I'll show you. It's Luster by Raven Lalani. And I thought this was going to be on the Women's Prize for Fiction. It was on the Women's Prize for Fiction. I thought I was going to love it, and I didn't. And I actually, when I first reviewed this, I've got my notes down here. I gave it 3 stars, but on reflection, I think it's a 2-star or maybe even a 1.5 star. Like, I think I read this in a week where there was a lot of bad news in relation to women. There was a lot of violence against women in the news headlines, a lot of just that week. It was that week. And I was unprepared for the violence against women in this book. I'd heard about what the book was about, in terms of a woman called Edie having a relationship, like being in a sort of dead-end job, being the only black girl in her office, having an affair with a married man who seems as though he's in an open relationship, but his wife doesn't really seem that she's that much up for it. And yeah, the violence in here shocked me. And I mean like, violence in books always shocks me, but this sort of come out of nowhere and I wasn't prepared for it. And every time I was going back to it, I was thinking, oh, I've got to go back to that book and put myself through that and stuff like that. So that's quite a selfish point of view to come at it from, I guess. But I really wasn't prepared for that. And at the time I thought, oh, maybe if I'd read this on a different news week I would have got a bit more from it, but looking back I don't know if I would have done. The things I really enjoyed in this book there was little of, and that's the relationship between Edie and then Rebecca, who is the guy that she's having an affair with, his wife, and then the relationship between Edie and Akila, who is their adopted daughter, who is also black. But yeah, I found those relationships sort of like complex and like intriguing, so I wanted to know more about those, but there wasn't so much of that. And every time it went back to Edie's relationship, I can't even remember that stupid man's name, Eric, I was just like, oh god. So yeah, this was a slog for me, and considering it's like not that long a book, yeah, I was saddened that I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. So that was the first one. The next one is another book from the Women's Prize long list, and that's Because of You by Dawn French. Now if you've watched my not my announcement video, yeah, it was my reaction video to the Women's Prize long list, you'll see that I was quite surprised to see Dawn French on there. Dawn French, if you don't know, is she started as a comedian and actor, in a programme called The Vicar of Dibley, which is one of my favourite programmes. I'm a very big fan of Dawn French. She's recently been a judge on RuPaul's Drag Race. I think about 10 years ago she started writing fiction books. Haven't read any of those books, so this was the first one that I'd read. And yeah, I was surprised to see this on the Women's Prize long list, because I guess I would consider it commercial fiction, and I can see why it was put on there as a sort of like the themes in there of sort of motherhood and that sort of thing. I'll go into more detail about that. I can see why, though, like there's a lot of books about mothers and about babies that have died on the Women's Prize long list this year, so I can see why it was on there. But I also think maybe it was put there as a sort of like a carrot to lure people, because I know that someone like my mum would see the book Because of You by Dawn French on that list, and then that would be a sort of like opening sort of thing to think, oh, maybe I'd like some of the other books on that list. So I can see why they've done it. But because there was books on that didn't get included on the Women's Prize long list, I was a bit disappointed that this has sort of made a place on it. And I was thoroughly entertained by the book the whole way through. I listened to it on audiobook. Dawn French does the audio, and I feel like the storyline was fine. As I said, it's about motherhood, so it's about 2 mothers who both have a baby on the 1st of January 2000. And one of those babies dies, and one of those babies survives. And then there's something that happens after that, and then it's about their lives and the daughter that survives life after that. And I enjoyed it, and like I said, I was entertained by it. One thing I didn't like is that there's a character in there whose name is Lee, but he's referred to throughout the book as twat. And it just really, like, every time I read it I was like, oh god. Yeah, I wasn't that manned into that bit, but like, I loved listening to Dawn French read it. I thought like her delivery was brilliant, and there was lines in it which like literally could have come straight out of The Vicar of Dibley or something that she's been in. But yeah, I feel like, was this put there for a reason in terms of like the writing? Maybe it wasn't like the most beautiful writing I've ever read or anything like that. Yeah, there we go. I thought it was fine, and I gave it 3 stars. So I mean, that's a good rating. I gave it 3 stars. And like I said, if you're looking to get somebody into the Women's Prize, and this might be, and normally they read a bit more of commercial fiction, then this would definitely be the carrot or the bridge to that. Next up was another audiobook I listened to called Small Pleasures by Claire Chambers. This is on the list as well, isn't it? Or did I think it was going to be on the list? Let's have a look. Small Pleasures is on the list, yeah. So I listened to this on audiobook, and you know what? I really, really loved it for 98% of the time. So I thought this was fantastic. The writing is warm, it's inviting, it's cozy, it's everything that I wanted at that time. And every time I started listening to it, I would slip into this sort of mind frame where I was just listening to this book and just having such a wonderful time. You're following Jean, the protagonist of this book, who works as a journalist, and the newspaper she works for somebody gets in touch with her saying that she has had a virgin birth. She has had she had a child, and she'd never had sex, and she had a virgin birth. So the paper start looking into this, and they do some tests with the mother and the daughter, and Jean becomes sort of embroiled in that family, and she sort of falls in love with that family, which I loved. And her relationship with Gretchen or Greta, the mother of the virgin Gretchen, or Greta I'm sure it was, and her daughter, and then there's 2 love stories in there, and everything about it, there was so much to love. The internal I really love Jean as well as a protagonist, and it's sort of like she has a bit of an internal struggle going on of like what to do in terms of what's for the best and what would also make her most happy, and I really loved that, and I felt like it was really played out perfectly. Loved it all the way up to the end. I was just thinking, this is 5 stars. I have found one of my favourite books of the year, having a lovely time. And to be honest, I think this will remain one of my favourite books of the year because the experience I had when reading it was fantastic. But literally the last sort of 7 minutes, I shouted out, there's something that happens, and I don't want to spoil this, but there's something that happens in the last 7 minutes where I was like, literally felt like I've been punched in the stomach, and she'd done me over, Claire Chambers. Is her name Claire Chambers? Yeah. And I thought, I can't believe it. I cannot believe that that's happened. For me, there was enough plot in the book and enough had happened to these characters that we didn't need that extra bit that happened at the end. And hopefully I'm not spoiling this for anyone who hasn't read it, and if you have read it, you sort of know what I'm talking about. Anyway, afterwards I spoke to Mercedes about it, and Mercedes said that the thing that happens in the end, which to me was a complete shock, is referenced at the beginning of the book. And as soon as she said that, I was like, oh yeah, it was. So I've come back to it and thought, okay, maybe I wasn't as unprepared for it as I thought, but I just slunk into this sort of cozy, lovely time of it. But yeah, so those were my thoughts on it, and I was just, well, devastated really. But yeah, I really loved it, and I gave it a 4, and to be honest, it's probably edged up to a 4.5 because I just loved it, and I think about it all the time. I just think it was just so wonderful. Next up was Rachel's Holiday by Marion Keyes. Look at this big old guy. I read this when I was doing my 24 hours reading in a weekend. I will link that vlog down below. I did manage it, and I read this book as part of it. So this is 626 pages worth of Rachel, who is a drug addict and an alcoholic, and she has been she's currently living in, she was living in New York, and she gets sent to a rehab centre in Ireland. And considering this was written 25 years ago, and I feel like anything I'm going to be saying here is probably going to be repeated from that vlog, so you might get a bit of repeat here, but like, I feel like this really held up quite well. There was a few sort of like ugh moments, but in relation to sort of like addiction, having not been an addict myself, but in relation to addiction and things like that, I feel like the stuff in here was really well done. The fact that Rachel is so like, well, I don't know why I'm here in this, like, all I do is just have a bit of fun with drugs every now and again, I don't know why I'm here, like, I thought that was really portrayed well. And also, like, Rachel isn't that nice, and like, she's annoying, and I still really felt endeared to her, and I felt like that is so typical of Marion Keyes, to be able to sort of whip up these warm, lovely feelings towards people who are very, very flawed and very, very annoying. So I enjoyed this. I gave it 3 stars. Yes, it's really, really long, but also yes, and I found this with grown-ups that I read like the same time last year, because I always tend to, for the past 2 years, I've read a Marion Keyes book for the Irish Readathon. Every single page adds to a bigger picture. There's no sort of like waste in here. Like, I'm never thinking, oh god, this is going on a bit. I didn't feel like that at all, and I didn't feel like that with grown-ups as well. Now, I have tried other Marion Keyes books and given up on them. So, but the 2 that I have read and enjoyed have been these guys. So, yeah, Marion Keyes just does people so well. Like, I feel like the little quirks and personality traits and sort of turns of phrase and catchphrases, they're just all perfect. Like, and she's just really, really talented writer, so I really enjoyed this. And I've actually got one on on audiobook at the moment. Is it called? Let me have a look, I'll tell you what it's called. Benny and the Jets. It's not called Benny and the Jets. Boom, 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 bum, 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 bum. Anybody Out There is called, because my library just added 2 more ones to the library, and that was available, so I got that. The other one was This Charming Man as well. So yeah, I enjoyed this. This is also part of a series. I think this is the 2nd in the series, but I hadn't read the first one. The Walsh Family. I think the other one follows Rachel's sister. But yeah, enjoyed it. There's a bloke out there on this like motorbike that sounds like a hairdryer. Hate it. And next up was the Henna Wars by Adiba Jaigerda, which I found really, really cute. I gave this 3 stars as well. Lots of 3 stars this month. And yeah, it's really reminded me of a week we did at school called Enterprise Week. Shall I tell you about Enterprise Week first, or shall I go into the book? I'll tell you about my Enterprise Week first. So when I was in year 11, so that's like 15, 16, you used to get into groups and then run a business for a week, and you had to like invest like a little bit of money, and then sort of like do tasks every day and like run a business basically. And we wanted to do a car washing business, but everybody was doing car washing. So we ended up doing we were like custard pie in the teachers and then giving half the money to charity. But yeah, that's what we did. But anyway, so this is following Nishat's sort of Enterprise Week. She is a Bengali Irish girl, and her business idea is to do henna. Now, as I said, she's Bengali, so henna is sort of like embroiled in her Bengali background. And there's another team of people who are also doing henna, and on that team is a girl that Nishat's got her eye on. Yeah, so but they're not. They haven't got any Bengali background, so they're sort of, it's like, look at that, they just find it like fun and fashionable. So like, I really feel like it deals with cultural appropriation really, really well for a YA book. Like, it puts it down in like terms that I was like, bloody hell, like this is so understandable, and like Adiba was really getting the point across perfectly. It also covers racism, homophobia. Nishat is queer, and her sort of like trying to come out to her parents and them just sort of like brushing it under the carpet and then not mentioning it again. It deals with like somebody being outed before they're ready to out themselves. So there's a lot in here that's dealt with, but there's still time for fun and for cuteness and for just an enjoyable read. I really had a fun time doing it. I feel like it's done sort of like, as I said, like Adiba did it in a really straight talking and sensitive way, but managed to like cover everything. So I was really impressed with that. I also really love the food description in here. They go to a Bengali wedding at the beginning and they're talking about the food and the curry, and it all just sounds amazing. Yeah, I just feel like this was perfect for me and perfect for the audience it was written for. So yeah, enjoyed it. Thought it was fun. Next up was Essex Girls by Sarah Perry. This is a short little book, but a long form essay written by Sarah Perry about Essex Girls. So if you're not from the UK, I guess you wouldn't really know. Like, Essex Girls previously been used as a sort of a bit of a slur, basically. Like, they've got these sort of, Essex is an area in the southeast of the UK. Southeast, that's proper Essex, sort of Kent, London, southeast of the UK, and yeah, there's like, the women there are often described as Essex girls, and they're sort of described as like women who wear white stilettos and dance around their handbags, and it's been used as a slur basically. And this is Sarah Perry sort of reclaiming that that Essex girl slur, and then visiting some amazing Essex girl throughout history that I'd never heard of, and also sort of attributing the term Essex girl to some modern day people. So for instance, Kim Kardashian, she's not from Essex, but she's very much got the Essex girl look about her and the Essex girl mentality, and how it's a sort of mindset rather than a geographical thing of where you're born. I really love Sarah Perry's writing. I've read a few of her books, and I've seen her interviewed I think maybe 3 times, and every time I just find her so interesting. So I was really enjoyed reading this, and also this front cover is just amazing. It reminds me of like pottery, and then it's got like girls out on a night out, just having a nice cocktail, handbag, dancing around a handbag. There are some dancing, like, I just thought it was really fun. If you're from Essex, or you know someone from Essex, I feel like this would be a really great gift. So yeah, very much enjoyed that. Then next up was Burnt Sugar, which I read on my e-reader by Avni Doshi. This is a one of the Women's Prize long list. I think it might have been shortlisted for the Booker. I don't think it won the Booker, if that's even happened now. I don't really follow the Booker very much, but I really did not enjoy this at all. I've given this 2 stars, but I think again it's one of those ones that on reflection it's probably 1 star. For me, this felt like it was on the precipice of something awful all the time, and that thing that I thought was going to be sort of gone into depth about was child abuse, and it was a really uncomfortable reading experience for me. And I really never settled into it. Also, so it's about the protagonist and her mother, and their relationship, and them living in an ashram when the protagonist was younger, and then up until now when her mother's unwell, and sort of like maybe with dementia, but it's never really gone into. But like the protagonist just seems really pissed off with her mum the whole time, like when she's really ill, and it's just very sort of like, I guess, ableist. She's like annoyed with her mum for doing this, or like for smashing something in the night and things like that. And it just felt grotty, and like the whole reading experience, I just did not enjoy it at all. Like, yeah, I really didn't have a fun time with it. Like I said, mother-daughter relationships seem to be something that's really featuring in the Women's Prize for Fiction long list this year, and like they're not my favourite thing to read about in books. Like, I don't really get excited about things like that. So this was never going to be one of my favourites, but then the whole reading experience itself was just not fun for me. And again, it was another one that I had to sort of drag myself back to in order to finish it. So yeah, and again, it wasn't even a long book, so yeah, it just didn't do anything for me. The next one did though, but that wasn't from the Women's Prize long list. This was one that I thought was going to be on there and wasn't, and that's We're All Birds of Uganda by Hafsa Zayan. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I listened to the audiobook of it. Firstly, this book is from a Murky Books imprint of Penguin Books, which is Stormzy's sort of publishing house. Stormzy is a Black British rapper and activist, and this book, reading this, made me so pumped for what else is going to come from Murky Books. So I've already had a look into what's coming out this year. I pre-ordered a book in, what's the one I've pre-ordered? Oh, Sorrowland by River Solomon, which is due out in May. And I'm definitely going to have a look at what else is from the publishing house, because I just thought it was fantastic. But yeah, so this book itself was about two guys, Samir and his grandfather, I believe, Hassan, and their sort of relationship and background with Uganda. So Samir is young lad living in London, working really hard for a banking job, sort of working all the hours under the sun, but like thriving with it, if you like, in terms of like material gains. He's got this amazing flat in London, he's got all the mod cons, etc, and that perspective was like my favourite perspective to hear from, because he just seemed like such a nice guy, and like really had his head screwed on and made really sensible decisions and wanted the best for himself. And yeah, I just really enjoyed him, and I really valued hearing about life and his life from his perspective, and that, whether that be sort of like his work life or his relationships with his friends, family. I loved hearing about his trip to Uganda. So he ends up going back to Uganda, and like hearing about the experiences of that place where he is from, like as in his parents are from there, but he hadn't visited before. So yeah, I just loved hearing from his point of view. And then the other perspective, as I said, is Hassan's perspective, and that's as an Asian Ugandan living in Uganda in like from the 1940s to the 1980s, and his perspective is told through letters that he's writing to his first wife. And I thought that was a really nice touch, and like very different from sort of like the Samir perspective we were hearing from. The only thing I will say is that when I'm listening to the audiobook of this, the Samir perspective was like, could just hear it sort of normally, like this sort of level, and then Hassan's would go like this, and then it would go to a Hassan chapter and it would be like this, and that sort of thing really gets on my wig. Like, I didn't mark it down or anything, but like, that was annoying. Overall, I loved it. I thought it'd be on the women's prize. It weren't, and like, I thought it would be on there before I'd even read it, and now I've read it, I can't believe it was on there. But yeah, really, really, really loved it. Would definitely recommend. And then the last book was another 4-star read. I don't know if I've had any 5 stars this year, but some really like, this month, but some really high 4 stars that I wonder when I get to doing like my mid-month favourite books of the year, if these will creep up to sort of like, well, I love that so much. But anyway, the last book I read this month was Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. And let's start by saying this is not a book that I would normally read. Like, big, massive, epic fantasy book. The front cover, I always think, looked a bit low. And yeah, so imagine my sort of delight and surprise when I found myself really enchanted and sort of swept away and enthralled by this really long, really detailed, epic fantasy book about Sorcha, who is she's got 6 brothers, and they have been cursed, and she is trying to break the curse. They've been cursed and turned into swans, and she is trying to break the curse so that they can regain their human form. Ordinarily, sort of like the length and detail of a book like this, I would put me off. But I loved being immersed in this so much, and in the same way that in the same way, but completely different book, Rachel's Holiday, like every single page sort of built a bigger picture. I also got that from here as well, so every single detail and everything that was said would come back to later on, and I just thought it was great. Sorcha herself was absolute dream to read about. Really, really loved following her and hearing about her, and honestly, I can't wait for the rest of the series. I'm going to listen to the second one. I think a lot of people, actually, when I reviewed it on Instagram, a lot of people got in touch and said that the second one's their favourite. So I feel if I enjoyed this one this much, then I'm excited to read the second one. And I'm going to listen to the audiobook of that. It's 22 hours long, so I feel like it's a nice big thing. I really loved being like immersed in it, and also I had it like the whole reading experience was a long one. I basically read it for the whole month. I got it out on Libby, read it for a bit, and also because it's so long, like one of those books when you're reading on an e-reader and you've been reading for about 20 minutes and you're like, I haven't even got up a percentage yet. But it had to go back and then come back 2 weeks later. So I read it for a bit, and then it went back, and I sort of thought about it while I was looking forward to getting back and seeing where the story went. So like almost like a series. It was like dipping in and out of a series. So really, really love that, and looking forward to reading the rest of the series. So yeah, those are the books that I read in the month of March, the second half of March. As I said, I'll link my first wrap up down below if you're interested in watching that. Let me know what you've read in the month of March, and I will see you all again soon for another book video. Goodbye!